Welcome to another episode of the GTM Innovators by 360 Insight. I'm your host, Kyle James, and today we are diving into really all things bespoke data. Let's just call it that, as John Marcus kind of told me. So I'm here with John Marcus. John Marcus is the former founder of Bedrock Data, which he sold to Formstack, and has done since then a range of VP and leadership roles in DevOps and sales. And today is kind of the founder at Fractional Ventures. John, welcome to the show, and feel free to tell us anything else about yourself that I might have missed or that you want to kind of expand upon.
No,
And
thanks,
we've known
Kyle.
each other forever, but yeah,
That's that's the first thing. That's the first mark against me is I've known Cal for quite a while. We got to cut our teeth back in the trenches early on at HubSpot, where I was on the sales side of things. My background actually is in engineering, electrical engineering of all things, and I got into sales very early on post education and was able to learn from just some of the best, like Mark Roberge over at HubSpot. Later on, I had the fortune of being able to create a couple of my own companies and find those homes. Not all of them successful. Some startups don't make it, which is okay.
sure.
But as a serial entrepreneur, what I'm doing today is I'm helping businesses through that gap, that challenge of growth. And not everybody's got the opportunity to go and hire or find someone full time to go do that. So that's where myself and the partnership here at Fractional Ventures, we help businesses out with that. We provide fractional rev op, sales, marketing, CS in particular. So really excited to be working on that for the past year and change here.
Nice, nice. Awesome. And I know you and I have talked a lot about you're deeper in the weeds and all this AI stuff than pretty much anybody I know. But I think something that you said that really resonated with me, and I think everybody needs to hear is garbage in, garbage out, right? Like everything starts with the data and the data analytics that you're putting together, and you're doing some really interesting, innovative ways to do that. But talk to us, tell us why it's so important to get that good data before you even do anything.
Yeah, what's really interesting, at least at the time that we're recording this, is you're starting to see people understand how to use some of these frontier models, these agentic models like GPT o1, for
Yeah.
example, and the kind of rumored o3. And it's a very different way that you have to use these LLMs. And everyone, kind of myself included, tried it out and said, hey, this is garbage. Like I'm going back to 4.0. Like that thing works. I know how to use it. But the kind of next step in evolution of any kind of AI applications in business all comes down to context. So the more context that you provide these agentic models, the further they can run with it. And one of the very early problems back before everybody started calling it AI, when we were doing machine learning, before
Hmm.
transformers and all this LLM stuff, is that you needed a lot of data to be able to go and train the models in a way that they'd be able to make good predictions. Now, what we're able to do is we're able to make these kinds of leaps in inference because these are inference models. That's what LLMs are, and predictions as to like what the answers to these questions are. And it all has to do with kind of what it's trained on. Now, the problem here is that sometimes there's too big of a jump. You can say like, hey, plan out an entire, business for me and do all the marketing and all the sales and all of that stuff. It's not going to be able to do it. At least
You haven't
the
told it what kind of business you want. You haven't told it what are you selling. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. So the other side of it is to say, well, I'm going to go give it a ton of context. And that's where the latest models are coming to play. And these are the ones when it comes to the go-to-market function that are the most comparable to what some entry-level roles are. When we talk about the end of the SDR or, the end of the analyst, like that's where it is. Now you can take some of these frontier models and use agentic methods to produce what first year out of college analyst might be doing at a bigger firm. So I think the challenge here is getting that context right, and to get it right you need to have good data. And I think the big challenge here when it comes to providing data for these models to get this context is, up to this point everyone's just kind of thrown everything at it and saw what stuck. We've got to be a little more constructive and a little more constrained, because you can't throw an entire CRM's worth of data and say like, hey, where are my best customers? Like we're still not there yet.
Right. So where do people get the data, right? Like how are you generating or are you working with them to generate the data for them? Generate data is being generated all the time, but I mean, is it in the right format? How do you standardize it? What do you do there?
Yeah, and this is the problem, because up until this point, data has been any data, right? Just a point of information. Let's grab an example of a customer. I've got a business name, I've got a state they're in, I've got like, the CEO's name, something like that. But that's all very specific structured data. And we can only go so far with structured data, even with machine learning techniques. If we want to start to get beyond that to make these non-obvious correlations or non-obvious inferences that LLMs can give us the ability to do, you have to go outside of the CRM, right? So the stuff that you would get out of ZoomInfo or out of Apollo or out of, whatever your favorite tool that has your list of information, they're going to have stuff like industry, they're going to have stuff like annual revenue. But what I'm finding when businesses want to go and target their best customers or best prospects, it's not something that's in that database. It's not in any database. And I got a couple examples of that, but you tell me kind of how you want to think about that.
No, no, I think this is great. Like, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, but like we're talking very philosophical, right? Like, give some concrete examples that I think will really help connect stuff. Like, we're using kind of like CRM data, right? So, like,
Yep.
how are you identifying the person on the call and their background, and are they right for contact, and how do you thread all that together and pull out actual insights for, let's just stick with sales reps, right?
Yeah, so today there's some good work going on, and I think Gong's maybe one of the companies that's most at the helm today and thinking about how to leverage that. The others in the space are a little bit behind. But as opposed to trying to think about rep efficiency, let's talk about prospect identification.
Okay.
One of the biggest challenges is not necessarily your team being consistent and like doing a demo and qualifying correctly. Like you can do that, right? You do sales training for that. But who they talk to and who they go after is actually the biggest challenge here. If you're going to be generating your own pipeline, whether it's ABM, whether you're going to be doing outbound yourself and trying to pull, prospects out of a hat, you have to kind of figure out what makes your best customers work for your
Mm-hmm.
business. So I'll give an example of one exercise that I did. I have a client that is really good at selling into the higher ed space. They crush it, except when they don't, and they don't know why. So we absolutely dominate in this particular vertical here, and sometimes we win and sometimes we don't. But man, when we win, and when we lose. So I took all of their existing customers in higher ed and I
Okay.
said, what do we know about these institutions? We've got the student body size, that all over the place, no patterns there. Are they in a major metropolitan area? Are they geographically dispersed? No patterns. Does it have to do with what letter of the alphabet? Like what's their mascot? Nothing. It wasn't until I started feeding these groups into LLMs and letting the LLM leverage its existing knowledge inside of its training to surface out some of these details. Help me understand these non-obvious links. And some of the stuff that started coming up, vocational programs, trades, non-traditional learners, two-year programs, commuter colleges. And went back and I looked at all of the wins and losses that they had. And sure enough, universities and institutions that have that demographic needed their particular product. Their particular product just absolutely crushes it in that
Mm.
space. So that's not in a database. I can't
No,
go in the database and be like, give me all of the schools that have a, 30% or higher commuter population, or exclude universities that have, traditional four-year programs that focus on liberal arts or something. Like you can't get that.
just the
So
thought
that
of trying to gather to compare those kind of things is overwhelming to people, right? Like,
it
for
is.
large companies, that's weeks on end just to like try to compile that stuff.
Right. And not only that, you can't even know if you go into a database and say, give me everybody, all the higher ed institutions that you know of. Does Zoom Info have all of that? You don't know.
Right.
Instead, go grab like an actual list. Like, give me every university. There's got to be something out there.
There
And
are,
that's going to
yeah.
be much, much bigger. And now I'm not relying on any of these data brokerages to decide for me who I should be reaching out to. Instead, I'm using my technology and I'm using what I know about my own customers to tell this data how it should arrange itself. Like this is the way that I think about it. Like back at Bedrock Data, we had this idea of, data topology. And I'm seeing that again here now. I'm seeing that how you arrange the information actually changes the kinds of results and the inferences that you get when you use LLMs to start to discover this stuff.
That's
And what you get
fascinating.
Yeah, and what you get now is really interesting because now I can say I have a bespoke data set that tells me if a university is or is not in these 7 dimensions that don't exist in the database anywhere, and I have that. And guess what? Nobody else does. That's your bespoke data.
Yeah, that's like traditionally, and my background, I used to sell high ed tech, is you might talk to 100, you would hope a rep would talk to 100 plus people, and you're hoping they would connect some neurons here to like see like, oh, I'm seeing this over and over again. But sounds like what you're saying is like, I'm just trying to repeat it back to like helps me understand it and the audience too. Like you could go across reps into hundreds, thousands of deals, opportunities, and say, hey, what are the common themes that no one has even thought about looking at, and just poke holes in a whole bunch of things and find connections that have never been made or never even thought before. Like,
Yeah.
and I imagine you can do that in hours, not
Yeah.
years, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like, forget 10x. That's 100x
Yeah.
change.
And this is where the new agentic stuff comes in because in a normal, how would you do this if you just had a bunch of smart people in a room? Well, you would essentially do exactly that. You'd ask like, "Hey, we're going to whiteboard and we're going to come up with like all the non-obvious connections," or like,
Come up with
"What
100
wouldn't it be?"
hypotheses and then spend a week researching every single one of them. Yeah.
Right. And then you go and do that research separately, and then you have somebody kind of challenge it and have an adversarial view on that. Well, with agentic stuff, you don't need to because the agents go and do that. You have an adversarial agent that just goes and challenges and pokes holes and stuff. And another one that says, hey, this relationship that you've inferred is a little too vanilla. Like, if I can find this in a database, it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Right. And now what we're doing is we're starting to look at things that are much, much outside of the normal realm of these relationships. The reason that and you could say, hey, I've got an infinite amount of sales reps, I got infinite time. I'm just going to work everybody. Why? And I see businesses get really scared of ramping down the volume because they think, oh, well, more is always better. It's not because you're reaching into people who the timing's wrong. You're burning your one shot that you've got, and it requires so much more effort to get onto somebody's calendar, to get into their consideration set, depending on where they're at in their buying life cycle. By the time that information hits Sixth Sense or hits Apollo's intent signals, it's over, right?
Yeah.
They've already gone down that path. They're already researching this stuff. By the time it hits the bid stream, the ship's already sailed, unless you're
Yeah.
in kind of the longest term of the longest term types of sales.
So that's interesting, right? Because you hear a lot of entrepreneur startup people like try a lot of different things and find out what succeeds and what failed. And kind of what you're saying, and I mean, you've done much more sales than I have, right? But like it was always a blessing when you get on a call with someone and you can instantly disqualify them in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not wasting any more time with them.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and you're like, all right, how do I take that approach and put it on steroids? Like that's what you're saying.
Mhm. Yeah, before you even get them on the phone, though, this
Yeah.
is the thing. Like, look at so here are the things that I'll feed into some of these inference models. I'll feed their homepage, the copy on their homepage. I'm looking at recent social posts. I'm looking at recent social posts from leadership. I'm going and grabbing all of this other information here to pull in and to essentially support or refute that that business is in that characteristic dynamic that we've built in our bespoke data.
Hmm.
One of the things they always say, in the movies, like run the simulations. What do the simulations say? This is exactly what we're doing. We're running simulations on like a sales cycle here. And you can go through and step by step, these other agents, again, they're trained on a very specific set of tasks, right? They're meant to do a little bit of thing, right?
Yeah.
Again, the jump, they can't create the entire business, but I can tell you how to pull together, maybe an AdWords campaign, right? And then there's going to be another one that has access to tools that can actually fire up and create the campaign in AdWords, right?
Yeah.
You have enough of these little agents and you combine them together, and there's a whole bunch of different topologies for that. What you end up getting is a really interesting and powerful engine to run these simulations before you even go out to the market. And now instead of going and saying, well, we have to focus in on the 3,000 companies that we think are going to be great fits because Zoom Info tagged them that way.
Hmm.
No, give me 30,000. Give me everybody that's in this space and just throw the machinery at it. It's getting cheaper and cheaper every day. Now, some of the really Deep agentic stuff that goes, very much down a path that's going to get pricey, right? You're going to spend a couple $1,000s on that, but for a couple $100, you can go and run a list of 100,000 companies through it, categorize them, and see if they meet your bespoke data qualification. I literally have a prompt for Fractional Ventures for specifically the revenue operations, which I focus on in the partnership, that will take the company, extract all the information that it can find from it, and then pull that out into a way that essentially surfaces what that business's potential challenges are.
Yeah.
It'll go and say, hey, their website's pulled together and they have these particular tech stacks and it's working well and like all this stuff is in line. Great. I don't really need to discuss anything related to kind of the fundamentals of, marketing, for example.
Yeah.
But they've got a ton of people that they're currently hiring and they're all AEs and SDRs. So let's go and explore what their plans are for growth because they're obviously in growth phase and that's potentially a good target for us. So it boils down to just a prompt or two that encapsulate all of these nuances that would take a rep a year or 2 years to learn. They'd have to look through hundreds and hundreds of websites and make all of these mistakes over and over and over. And you can run that even before you decide to market against them. And that's where stuff like ABM's coming back pretty strong.
Yeah.
Account-based marketing, now you can target 1,000 businesses. You don't have to target the entire industry. You can say, here are the 1,000 that like meet this profile. It's that university with the high commuter population and the non-traditional learners. Go grab 1,000 of them. I can run a reasonable campaign without infinite dollars on that.
So let's take a step back. Like, 'cause everything we're talking about is like, this is all the work that you can do before you even have, like, this is reinventing the sales qualified lead, term.
Yeah.
But what sort of data or what sort of reps or how much work do you need from, opportunities to like build this? Like, or does this even happen in the early stage startup before, reps have gone and started talking to prospects and learned like how much you need hundreds of opportunities to kind of analyze and in sales one or are you even thinking about doing this before you talk to anybody? Because that seems like that's a whole other like mind-blowing thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Let's go and let's put a stamp on
All
them.
right,
The
slow it
AI,
down a little bit.
AIQL, right? Boom. We tagged it. AIQL. If nobody said it before, we just said it now.
Brilliant.
So what's an AI qualified lead and how soon can you get to that? So what I'm finding in my research right now, is that the generation of these prompts to discover those non-obvious links, that's hard. Like
Yeah.
I'm currently struggling with that, and I have to put a lot of my brain power and partnerships brain power, and then solicit that around to get that shored up. Once it's good, though, it tends to hold pretty well, and you can use feedback from the sales team to essentially go and tune and adjust it. So that's human in the loop.
And the more data
Is
you get, the more it refines, and it might change over time as you,
the
go
prompt's going to
after bigger
change.
targets or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly, because then I can come up with a list of 100, a sample 100 businesses, and if an SDR, like a senior SDR, is like really good at focusing on a particular type of business, they just got an eye for a good fit. Great. I want them to score it great, marginal, or poor, right?
Hmm.
And then if most of that's coming back great, some of that's coming back poor, we're going to go and adjust the prompt to control for that. Now, how much do you need? I've done this with as little as 10 data points, like
Wow.
10 companies to be able to generate pretty good prompts that will get you through your first, say, 1,000. So you can get about 2 orders of magnitude, again, real rough numbers here, about 2 orders of magnitude of scope, right, and inference for a given amount of data. And so after that 1,000, for example, you're going to need to go back and refine it.
Well,
And you're
and
going
I
to,
imagine a lot of
start to get some.
industries in B2B space, like 1,000 probably is most of your target audience. I mean,
Yeah.
some are much TAMs are much larger than that, but a lot aren't.
Yeah, and you could, run it over a big data set and then come back and say like, okay, we're going to go try for the next 6 months. We're going to work these X amount of thousands that came back as great fits from
Uh-huh.
this classifier. But I think you'd be missing something because you don't need that many conversations to go back and feed this. Because again, you got the call transcript, right? You have all of the notes in the company. You've got their homepage now. You've got, whatever your qualification framework, you filled that out. And
Hmm.
that context right to the beginning of the call, that's the important thing. So we take that context, we feed it back up to the top. I got this written down on a piece of paper. If I made it bigger, I just put it right on the screen. We'll
Sure.
maybe share it afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. Send it to me.
But
I'll
the
make sure
idea
to
is to
get it out.
take that final prompt, see what's happening, and then evolve it over time. And as that evolves, you can stamp that, right? And we can say,
Uh-huh.
okay, V1 here did a really good job. It lets some tire kickers through, but it doesn't exclude this very, unique but important buyer. On the other side of things, you come into like V3, V4 of your prompting, and now it's actually really refined and it may have attributes that you desire or you don't desire, but as you get more of that feedback from the field, from their calls, that's when the stuff really starts to dial in well. And you can get some of these prompts that are, pages and pages long. I've got
Yeah.
one that's almost 10 pages long right now, and that's all derived from follow-on conversations to add nuance and context so that that whole prompt, right, the whole prompt space is loaded up with all of the tokens that you need for that particular model to make an inference about a new piece of information, which is the whole idea of AI and machine learning anyways.
Mhm. Wow. So it seems like there's no reason all of this would not exactly apply to churn analysis, would not apply to account management upsell. Like instead of just the sales front end, like how are you using it to account managers to manage it? People that are trying to save, like trying to find new opportunities to up, like, right? Like it just seems
Yeah.
like you just reapply the same stuff
Yeah, there's a bit of a tweak there
as long as you got
because
10 customers, right?
right, yeah, you need a bit of data first, and you need the event that you're testing for. So you need some churns. The thing that you can start to do now, though, is you can look at the entire customer base and instead of trying to identify the holistics of your potential market, instead what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify the aberrations of the sick customers, right? We're looking for the people who are sneezing and coughing on the train.
Yeah.
Um, Slightly different technique to get there, but can still be done. And it's actually similar in that you're looking at the characteristics of the fit, because a great fit business, aside from like going out of business, they're not going to churn. Right? If they're getting value from your product, that's by definition the fit, and they're paying money and they're seeing the value from your solution, then great. Unless there's something tragic that happens on their side, like they should continue to be a customer. That's the whole idea of software as a service.
Yeah.
Now, the fit that is going to be the best customer every single time isn't always the one that sales goes and sells. And as you were on the customer side of the line and I was on the sales side of the line back at HubSpot, I tell you, not all mine were great, right? They all had potential, but sometimes you had to work toward them. And this is where I think it gets interesting. Trying to identify which of your customers in your existing customer base are at risk in a very different way. This isn't about product usage. This isn't about like how many people are on the system or even about how much they're spending. Because everybody goes and looks like, oh, we have to look at the most MRR and that's how we're going to sort everything. Like, yeah, that's a good first order. Like, don't lose your biggest customers. But after that, how do you know who are the most at risk?
Mhm.
Well, at risk is happening when the business and that client are separate, like they're going different ways. And that's just the same as going and looking at somebody's website, following the social feeds, like going and pull all that information together and then go and say, hey, these were the four that churned out of the 10 or the 20 or whatever your total population is. And then you start to use the prompts to go and start to pull out the non-obvious stuff. Because if it was just like, oh, your customers that use your product the least are the ones that are going to churn, well, there wouldn't be any business in CS. You just go look at those people, fire those
Right.
people, and then upgrade the others. This is why there's still an art and a science to account management because we don't know.
Yeah.
And the more information that we can provide the AMs and the CSMs, the better they're going to be able to inject value and to realign, like that kind of chiropractic adjustment between the business and the client. And I think that getting to that, absolutely, you can use a lot of the same overall tools. Technique's a little different, but you're
Sure.
trying to find out, who's coughing on the train.
Yeah. So let's try to, I'm curious, like to kind of wrap this back to like how do end users do, like, do you integrate and send this, do you set up fields and data properties inside of a CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot, or are you build kind of your own little UI for this for teams? Like, how is that stuff leveraged? And how does, you know, sales Sammy just come up with a persona, use it and not feel overwhelmed? Or do you present it to them in kind of like a report, or what does that come back like?
Yeah, everything's got to get back in context with the reps. If the reps are going to use it, it's
Right.
got to be in their context. It's usually in their CRM. Like
Got
that's
it.
where they're living. If you wherever you're managing opportunities or you're managing your leads, if you're thinking about account-based outreach strategies, that's the system where it's got to go. Now, tools that I use, whole bunch of LLMs, bunch of custom-built stuff, big stack Python and data science, right? But what that generates are insights, and those insights go into the CRM, and it generates some kind of classification. And that could be like, at risk or doomed or, great. It could be great fit, marginal fit, not a fit.
Depends on
And
how they
that
have those fields set up in their system.
exactly. And that's acting as guidance. So when you pull all of these non-standard insights, this bespoke data in, I like to think of any CRM, all the accounts that I've got in there, all the leads that I've got in there, as a deck of cards. And as a rep, I want to be able to grab the card off the top, and I want it to be the best card that I could play, right?
Hmm.
Give me the best prospect, and then I'll keep going and going and going, and I'll
I
keep
see.
working through there. And if I run out of cards in the inbound deck, I'm going to go grab the outbound deck. And who do I want to make the first call to? The most qualified potential outbound prospect I can find.
So you've
And how
got
do I
some
know it?
sort of AIQL scoring happening too, then.
Yeah, and the scoring a lot of times doesn't need to get much more advanced than great fit, and they've done something that our customers do right before they go and buy. So it doesn't need to be super complex. The scoring mechanism need to be super crazy. And in the beginning, the most important part is you pick up the phone and you call them,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to the outbound stuff, because we're trying to make sure that we're identifying the non-obvious things that lead us to believe that this business is about to have that moment. They're about to go and make some decisions on whatever it is that we sell. Back at HubSpot, we talk about you're either redesigning your website, you just redesigned your website, or you're about to redesign your website. Those
Boom.
are the three phases of marketing, right? And it was just one big loop. And that's the case too, right? The loop of consideration. And I'll have to send over some, MS Paint graphics so we can share with the viewers as well. But there's this loop, and by the time it hits 6 cents, by the time it hits Apollo or whatever, it's too late, right? They've already started down that path. They've already had internal conversations. If you can find the businesses that exhibit the symptoms of wanting or needing your service, you can make that outreach, and your outreach is much less desperate and it's much more educational, and you become the trusted advisor. You're setting the framework for how they evaluate your software.
Yeah.
It's like whoever wrote, if you ever get an RFP and you didn't write it, you're being shopped, right? Is one of
Mhm.
the sayings that we have in sales. Now, we can go and start the conversation at a company and say, hey, you're looking to generate more leads. Hey, you're looking to, reduce costs. I see all these things on your website. I see what you guys are talking about. Businesses that do this a lot of times are trying to solve this problem. Are you trying to solve that problem today? And they're like, yeah, we actually been having some conversations around the water cooler about it. Great. Let me come in and help you with an assessment.
Yeah.
We'll take 30 minutes. We'll go through your business. We'll plug in some stuff. I'll give you some benchmark data. And if that all lines up, then maybe you're fit for what we sell. If not, that's fine too. You'll come out smarter. And that is a fundamentally different conversation than 15 emails that I got off of some email sequence and like 20 cold calls that I never picked up.
Right.
It's one shot, one connection, one sale. And that's going to require that we slow down and focus on the best prospects that are at that point in time before they've ever shown a signal externally. We have to be able to determine that via that non-obvious data, that bespoke data that we've got, and that's going to give us the advantage. I think that's the future of sales. That's tech sales for the next 5 to 10 years.
So let's go there. Like, right? Like if I'm a rep, this is fundamentally changing the way I approach everything. I would imagine, spending some time in sales, like this sounds too good to be true. Like, great, you're telling me I'm gonna have exactly what I need to close. But like your worker, what is their reaction to this and you providing all this and like what are you seeing the results, in hand-to-hand combat? How's that
Yeah.
going?
Yeah. So first, there's always detractors in anything that's new.
Sure.
But the ones that are
People still
big.
hate using CRMs to input data, right?
That's exactly it. It starts with the systems themselves. They're like, oh, I have to use this thing. Can you just like set up calls for me? And I kind of changed the script a little bit. I said, you're more than welcome to, have a BDR do $100 for you every single day, and you can do all those basic sequences. But if you choose that you want to leverage this information, we're going to change the relationship of, the AE and in prospecting. This is going to require that more AEs go back to being full stack reps, right? Unless you're on a plane flying to a site to do a demo with your sales engineer and your VP in tow and all of that stuff. If you're in any kind of velocity sale or you're selling SaaS, for example, you're going to need to start doing some more prospecting. And the reason is, and this is, back in my day, we had to do all of our own prospecting. We did because we didn't have
Yeah,
BDRs back then in
yeah.
HubSpot. But the reason that was so important is I knew the business cold. Like that prospect, I knew everything about them. I knew everything about our product and why those two things go together. And we really lost our way when we saw the kind of, delusion of efficiency by adding in BDRs and sequences. And I'm just as much of the problem because I've built tools to do that.
Hmm.
I ran the outbound team in HubSpot. I was the outbound guy at the inbound company. Boo hiss, right? But the thing that we did so different is we really, really knew our prospects. And when I say know the prospect, we knew about their business. We understand the space. Like we would
Hmm.
subscribe to newsletters and we would become experts in that so that it didn't matter how we got them on the phone. We had something intelligent to say that was going to provide value for them. And that starts this whole reciprocity loop where I'm going to help you out with some information. You're thinking about generating leads online. I can help you. Take Better Act Data, for example. Hey, you have these systems. I see that you're having some struggles. You're growing your sales team. You just raised some money. How are you going to keep all of this stuff in sync? Hey, I've got some tips for you. I got some strategies around that, best practices. I've got guides. And now we're moving away from I'm trying to push a piece of software on you, is I'm trying to ask you questions, get information out so that I can tell you if I can even help you.
Yeah.
And along the way, I'm going to give you the value that you need so that whether or not you go with us, like, you're going to find something of value on this conversation. And that's why you're going to take the call. There's a reason to have that qualification conversation for both sides.
Well, and I'd imagine too, right? If this is how it's playing out, I don't see any reason that your hypothesis, your theories are wrong. It's fewer contacts for the customer, right?
Yeah.
It's they don't have to worry about dealing with as many people. Like maybe it does get down to a point where you don't have to deal with a BDR, you don't have to deal with account manager, you don't have to deal with somebody onboarding you. It's like that one sales rep who is your point person throughout, because they've got all the resources that's kind of supporting them through different elements.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that seems like a good experience for everybody.
It is.
You're getting back to like relationship building for the long term.
Yeah, and I think that there's a challenge because I'm 15 years out from, my first inside sales role. And, back then that was the reality. You had to because we didn't have all of the specialization. There's going to be a real big reality shift for people who, maybe have been in it for 5 years, who are used to, having BDR set up appointments for them.
Hmm.
There's going to be a shift there. And I think that there's enough slack in the system that it's going to take 5 to 10 years for this to really shake out. But you see how many people are just absolutely annoyed online. You look on LinkedIn and everybody's like, oh, I had to talk to a BDR. I just want to see the software. And there's, I think it's like marketingops.com. They have a whole library of just no BS demos. It's like literally, this is the demo. You don't have to reach out. You don't have to fill out a form. You don't have to talk to BDR. Like, you know what you need. Like, here's the demo. Now, in sales, we get scared of that because now we have people going and trying to make inferences about their, need for a piece of software that they don't know. Like, we
Yeah.
want to talk to them. So I think what's going to have to change is we're going to have to cut out a bunch of the crap, bunch of the steps before having an honest conversation about the business. And I don't know from a skill perspective what percentage of the current inside sales practitioners are out there that understand that value-driven selling.
Let me ask you this, because where you've got my head spinning right now, right, is what this plays out is people become where I call it mercenaries, right? Like to the specialization role. You're a specialized mercenary at BDR. You can go plug that in any company, or account manager, whatever. But it sounds like if this is correct, the way it's playing out in my head is like people start specializing in businesses, relationships, and products again. And and because of that, you probably stay at companies longer, right?
Yeah.
Like, would you say that's not correct? Which I think people are
Well,
kind of tired of jumping around all the time anyway, right?
yeah. Yeah. So here's the follow on to that. Here's essentially the, not the logical conclusion, but the next step is you hit your number more often and you make more money. And people who have ownership over their work and have the ability to kind of set their own destiny and to achieve that and to see how it's going to happen are much happier. If you look
Mm,
at kind of modern knowledge workers, people are jumping around not because they're like, oh, I can make another $5 over there. No, 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 no. It's like this place sucks. And I don't like the people I work with, or
yeah,
I'm not in a field that I enjoy, or I don't like the product, or it's just like there's something bad there. And as humans, there's only so much tolerance we have, I think, in kind of current generation of the workforce. There's only so much tolerance for kind of bad working conditions. And it doesn't mean like, oh, I get to work from home and like I get to expense my lunch every day. It's like I just don't like the people. I don't like talking to these prospects. Like I'm not excited about this business.
yeah, yeah,
And those that do get excited, and we saw a lot of this at HubSpot, and
yeah,
anybody that I hire, I really want to know, like, why are you excited about this industry, this particular company? Is because they have some reason to be excited. It's like, I love talking to early stage businesses. I love working with early stage businesses. I want to be hands-on. I want to be hands-on keyboard. That's, what I do. I make sure that any of engagements that I'm getting my hands on keyboard and building something while we're at it.
yeah,
And that creates meaning and purpose and drive. And there's a ton of stuff written about this and how that's meaningful for people to stay in roles. So I can see people doing better, making more income for that particular role, needing fewer people,
yeah.
right? Which is the big elephant in the room.
Concept. Yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
need
it's
fewer
because
people to
the
get it
software
done.
is because software is, you level out the playing field when AI can handle more and more of it. So it is really the relationships and the industry specialization. Yeah, I see exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's really hopeful, honestly, and compared to a lot of stuff you hear about AI in the future.
Well, we just shove so many people and so much people process and technology, the stuff that my personal website is people process technology. We just
Hmm.
shoved it all in there, right? And it's like, oh, we need, additional nurturing sequences to squeeze like that 1% more. Well, there's a whole shift in how people want to buy. And we're going back to what it used to be, which is again, relationships, expertise in the product, focusing on the qualification, focusing on the value that you can drive for a business. And nobody wants to go back and like look at how many dials they did that day and how many connects they did that day. So, but when I say
Yeah,
that to VPs of sales, man, they clamp up. They're like,
yeah,
what do you mean we're going to stop doing all this outbound? I was like, fine, give me 5 reps, right? And they're going to go and work these, specialized things here. They're going to understand these businesses. They're going to do the outreach. And if they don't, we'll go find 5 other reps that will. I think what will happen in terms of the labor force, though, and this is wild speculation.
let's go.
Those that
I
are,
love wild speculation.
yeah, those
Reckless.
that, yeah, reckless speculation. Those that have essentially gone down and thought that they have specialized, like they're a specialized BDR, like, they have this very specific part in the process that they do. That's going to get thrown up on end, and it's going to cause a lot of people to have an honest conversation with their relationship with tech sales. And they're going to
Yeah,
need to say, okay, yeah, well, hold on. I said I was going to do dials, and I did the thing that I said that they said I had to do, and then I did it. And like, okay, well, where's my success? Where's my instant promotion? Well, that's gone now because it's much more, autodidact. Like self-learning is going to be the key here to being better than the next rep or the competitor because you did the research. Those that don't get on that bandwagon and don't start to obsess about their prospects and the things that make them different or focus on an industry or a product, they're going to get cast off. And then I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of very skilled people who understand these processes that hopefully get the joke at the end of the day. It's like, oh, wait, it's actually about, understanding the market and the customer.
it's the people,
And
stupid.
yeah, it's the people, stupid. They're going to land at companies that wouldn't have had access to, say, high skilled athlete, AE, tech, came through an awesome BDR program. They're going to get access to those kinds of people. You're going to find, manufacturing businesses where you're going to get somebody who was at, a HubSpot or an IBM or came through the PTC training program all of a sudden be able to focus in on something that they care about. Hey, maybe they're really into, uh, like animal husbandry. What kind of skills could you bring about in like negotiating, buying and selling cows, right? So
Right.
I think we're going to see a lot of the condensed, concentrated skills that are trained in these, tech institutions shoot down into a lot of other industries. I think we're going to see a huge dispersion of what are traditionally tech sales tactics in other fields. So you're
Yeah.
going to start seeing more marketing automation in things that are, kind of, paper and pen kinds of businesses. And I think that that spread's going to be a good thing because that's going to raise the floor on how business gets done.
It's fascinating. Fascinating. Let's timestamp that here. Like, let's come back and look at it in 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years, and like, were we crazy or were we absolutely spot
The
on?
the AI qualified lead. I'm going to
Yeah.
see if I can see I got a website. Go buy it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, John. That was absolutely insightful. And I'm sure like if the audience is like me, we all need a chance to go back and like probably listen to it again, right? Just to like think about, wow, like there's a lot there. Um, but tell everybody like how could they contact you? What are your lat long on online and anything upcoming that you want to share or promote?
Yep. Real easy to get a hold of me. Just John at fractional.ventures. That's with an H. Go check out fractional.ventures. That's a website. And pickaxe.technology is the other tool that we're building up. If you've got challenges in your business, you're in that growth phase, we're happy to have a conversation. And even if it's not something that's immediate right now, there's probably an assessment in your future, and we're happy to kind of get you pointed in the right direction. Aside from that, for me, this winter is going to be a lot of AI research. Going to be publishing some stuff, not into journals, but some longer form content. So
Cool.
I'll make sure that everybody gets notified on that. But if you go to fractional.ventures, you'll get all the info you need.
Awesome. Love it. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe, like, share, give it a 5-star review. If you didn't like it, then don't give it a 5-star review and just reach out to me. You can just hit me up, research at 360 Insights, open to suggestions, topics, whatever. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another go-to-market innovator. And until then, keep growing, everybody. Have a good one.